Hey guys, we're here today in Houston, Texas with Fred and Janice at French Quarter Cajun Seafood down off Highway 6. And today we're going to get to know a little bit more about how they started French Quarter Cajun Seafood and get going. So tell me, what made you jump into the restaurant industry? What day did you wake up and say, hey, I'm going to be in the restaurant industry, this is what I'm going to do? How did that happen?
I don't know if there was a certain day, but you know, my mom and my father were in the business in the late 50s and 60s. Really, I wasn't around during the time, but I've always had a fascination of being in the business, and I had relatives that were in the business, and I saw them, and I kind of said, I want to do this. And I was probably about in high school, so I was in high school, and I really had the idea of going into the restaurant business.
Okay.
Nothing like this at that point, but you know, like a burger shop, sandwich shop, and I progressed from that point.
So you started a burger shop or worked in another burger shop?
Actually, I worked for my relatives for a little bit just to get
the experience. Learn the ropes.
Yes.
Good.
And then I ventured on my own. And my brother and myself, we opened a restaurant, a hamburger joint called Freddy's.
Freddy's. So Freddy's known as Freddy's today, like down across the street over here, is it?
No.
Okay.
No, it's a little. It is still there though. Since '88, we opened in '88. It's still there.
It's very good.
I-10.
Okay, excellent. So you started the hamburger joint, and then you sell out of that one, or?
We did sell out of it, and then Janice and I went on our own. We opened up a kind of a. We were ahead of our time on this deal, but we were doing a farm table type restaurant, and we did this in the early '90s.
Okay.
Great reviews from Allison Cook, the Houston Chronicle critic.
Yes.
It was just a small place, maybe 30 or 40 seats.
Okay.
But everything was really from the farm to the table, and we just outgrew it.
Yeah.
And so at that time, Janice and I were looking for something a little bit bigger, and that's why we're here now.
Okay, so 1990. What year did you start here again?
So this restaurant was opened in '95, March.
95. Okay, very good. And what made you decide Cajun? Did you get some Cajun soul in you, or where does it?
Well, Janice's background is Cajun, but this restaurant was open about a year before we got into it.
Yeah.
And he had financial issues, and the restaurant business is a hard business.
Yes.
And if you don't have a pretty good account, cash account, when you open up, you would draw down quick. So we came into this about a year after he opened it, to help him out. And then he decided about a year later to get out of it. So he was here for about 2 years.
Okay.
But Janice and I have ran it since then.
Okay.
100%. And but she had a background. Her family is from Louisiana. Actually, both sides of her family are from Louisiana.
And was your family in the restaurant industry as well, or what's your?
We were produce folks. My grandfather was a farmer.
Yeah.
And so that was our background as far as in the food industry.
Okay.
So years as Freddie and I started into it together, my love for it definitely came alive for my family background of being great Italian cooks.
Yeah, yeah. So Italian cooks is your forte, but you had the Cajun background, and then.
And Cajun really, truly, Louisiana, I mean, it's lots of Italians. Yeah. I mean, it's got an Italian background. There's so much pasta. You know, it's a mixing bowl of different nationalities, but Italian is very big in New Orleans.
Like the sausage and all that, it's all Italian.
All Italian. Very good.
Muffalotto dressing, that's all Italian.
Very good. Yes, awesome. So, Fred, you brought up a good point. The restaurant industry is known to be challenging.
Very.
But why, right? It can be lucrative, sure, but the margins are known to be thin.
Very thin.
It's very challenging. Why is it challenging?
It's challenging because you are trying to appeal to a small group of people. Because not everybody, in this particular case, like seafood, for example. So you're appealing to a small fraction of the population out there.
Okay.
So in our case, seafood, if you don't do it right, you're not going to get anybody in here. So when you do get someone in here, and it takes a lot of effort to get someone off that street to come in the doors. You want to make sure that we make a lasting impression that they enjoy the food, they enjoy the service, and those are so critical in the business.
Okay.
It's paramount to be on top of your game every day.
And I really feel like too, realizing that you can't please everyone, because especially in this food, I mean, Louisiana folks are all great cooks, right?
Yeah.
So everybody, and there's a different flavor for each part of Louisiana. So you have to realize you have to give the best product, the best quality and consistently fresh, and you will appeal.
So what you're saying is just because I'm a good cook doesn't make me a good restaurant.
Absolutely
Oh,
not.
no. You see all those restaurants that are closing out there
Yeah.
that made it? That's what happens.
First, it can't get too personal. First off, you have to realize everyone's going to have a different opinion of food. I mean, they're going to like, well, I want a thicker roux on their gumbo, or I want a thinner, or I want this. But you have to have your staple. That's what it is. It has to be fresh,
Yeah.
and they know that's what you're about.
Okay.
And be willing to accept that some are going to say, well, this is not as good as my mom's. Yeah, it's not. But
So you have to know how to cook food. That has to be a must, right?
Right.
You mentioned if you don't do it right, they won't come back, right?
That is a must.
You have to know how to get them in. That's a must. But you can't do it all by yourself. You're just two people.
No.
So how do you go about teaching people how to do these systems and processes to maintain freshness, to maintain quality? What do you do? How do you get started?
I've been fortunate, I have Felix who's worked here as long as we've been open.
Okay.
And so important is the stuff that happens behind the scenes that you don't even see out here. Is to get into the deliveries,
Okay.
putting the preparation into it. Stuff is not seen out here, but you see the results of it,
Yeah.
but you don't actually see what's going on behind the doors. So that's very important, is making sure that we have fresh deliveries, the right vendors, all that, and Felix handles that pretty well.
Okay.
and having back of the house team that enjoys preparing fresh stuff. They don't want everything to come in already pre-done,
Nothing.
They don't want everything pre-chopped, pre-done. They enjoy working from scratch,
Yes.
and so that is a pleasure because you don't see that often. So that's a part of the big part of our success is they enjoy what they do. And I don't think that they would be here 25 years along with the restaurant if they didn't. They've all been here since the beginning, the guys in the back.
So you've had people here how many years? I'm sorry?
25 years.
I'm not entirely sure that's common in the restaurant industry, is it?
No.
What's the common number?
Flips. Oh, it's like a revolving door.
Yeah.
Every couple months or
Yeah.
something?
And
right?
in the front of the house, servers and bartenders, they go really maybe a year or two at the most on the average. But in the kitchen, we've had, like Janice said, 25 years.
Wow.
And not just one,
Wow.
but several.
Multiple.
Yeah. So
So people is a key piece of this.
it is.
Right?
It is.
Communication
Yeah,
skills.
Janice and I can't do it on our own. Believe me.
And finding people who can understand certain things, why they're important, and then carrying those forward where you don't have to worry about it anymore. Okay. Wow.
Well, we always worry about it, but yeah.
Yeah.
There's someone there to help carry the load.
Yes, yes. And interesting about worrying, we're in a very difficult time as a
Very
whole,
difficult,
right?
yeah.
We're in the middle of a pandemic now, and as we're in this pandemic, there's different challenges that are thrown your way. So you mentioned earlier when we were talking, getting started was really challenging, right? What's harder, getting a restaurant started or navigating through this, or can you even equate them?
Well, they're two different things, but I would say, in general, this is probably more difficult because you have no control over it. See? At least when you open a restaurant, you have a little control of everything you do. Here, we have no control of nothing. We have no control of how many people can sit in here. The government runs that. When they shut you down, the government runs that. We have no idea how that happens. So, to be in the restaurant business in this situation, it's not survivable if it stays for a long period of time. The restaurants aren't geared up. We have such thin margins. Having a 25% or 50% occupancy, and then not only that, people are frantic to come and go out to eat. So even if you do have 50%, you may not even hit that number because people just don't want to go out to eat. So it's very hard. This is probably more difficult than opening a restaurant, for sure.
Very difficult.
And you still have the same expenses. So you still have your basic same expenses. So you still have to cover those expenses when you're at the mercy of the government, whether the government will allow people to come into your business. And it's also hard for the staff because everyone feels this. They feel this in their own life, right? So every day is like opening up a new business. Not in the back of the house, thank goodness. Those
Yeah.
guys have got it down and they
Yeah.
have really carried us through this. Our management's done a great job carrying us through it. And our key people who've been here. But it's still difficult. It's an everyday thing. We come in and it's like reopening every day. So, but, you just do the best you can.
Yeah. And create those new ways of working to deliver the same experience to your customers, yet safely.
Yes.
Yeah. Very important. For
This is
sure.
why we use Tabby.
Tabby. Yeah. Thanks for the transition. I don't pay him, I promise. So, you guys started using Tabby, right? And we came, I think I talked with your daughter first, Brooke.
You did.
I talked with Janice, talked with you, Fred. When we first pitched the idea, what did you think? What went through your mind when you heard this? It's a very new concept, right? Not many people are used to it.
This is back last year, before all the pandemic and all this was going on. And what appealed to me was the fact that a customer in lunch, for example, in lunch, we have a little rush crowd here before the pandemic. So sometimes the servers could be a little slack because they could be getting tea for somebody else or this or that. But they're able to pay and walk out, which was to me, what I liked about it is because they don't have to wait on the server to give you the card, take the card back to the register, run the card, bring it back, you sign it. All those steps are cut out. You just pay for it at the table and you're gone.
So it's automated. I assume you get a good bit of business just from surrounding businesses in the neighborhood. They come here, they eat, whether it be a business lunch or a personal lunch. And then the idea being they need to be back at 1 p.m., right? So to know that they can come and eat at a place and get back in time makes them consistent customers and delivers a step up in your experience.
It does.
Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely.
Okay, very interesting. Yep.
And I feel too with that same rush, sometimes groups, we have a group of friends that we go out to dinner with that like to separate their checks.
Yeah.
And it's very frustrating if you're waiting on the server.
Okay.
So this enables them to be able to pay on their phones if they need to. After the server's already separated the check, then they can go in and pick it up and
just automate the process.
Automated process, so they're not waiting on a server who already has other tables to take care of.
Certainly. It takes the unfun part of the experience out, right?
Right.
And just automates it.
Yeah, it does.
Good. What's the feedback you're getting from the customers? What do they think? Do they look at you funny when you show them how this works? Or?
At first they were kind of hesitant to it. But I tell you, the game changer was the pandemic.
Yeah.
Everybody going contactless. So we were ahead of the game with this, and we already had this in place. So now people really appreciate it.
And the to-go side of it, I tell you, it's really, to-go's being the big part of our business. It's so nice to be able to do it through the to-go part because they're not having to hand a card off to a server. They're not having to wait for a server. They can do it on their phone. So the convenience of it it's been awesome, and it hasn't been any issues. I mean, they work through it quite easily.
On that same point, because it helps us out with the curbside. So all we have to do is just take the food out to the car, and I have to take the food out, get the credit card, swipe the credit card, and go back. So it saves us steps.
Okay, just cuts out all the back and forth, reduces the contact, keeps your employees safer too, right? Because the food's going one way, all of the touch is going one way, which then again keeps all your other customers safer because they know there's reduced contact.
Exactly.
At your
Absolutely.
restaurant. Yes. No, absolutely. Good. Appreciate it. So, talking through this, when we talked about it, we went from concept to rolling this out in your restaurant. What went through your mind? Were you nervous about how it would be adopted? And was there anything you felt went good, or how did that process go with rolling it out to your restaurant and teaching people to use it? Was it pretty straightforward? Was it complicated? What was it like?
Well, I wasn't nervous about it, first off.
Okay. Why not?
Well, I'm always technology. I always like to be ahead of the game with technology.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
this was one of those ways to do that. But I think I was hesitant because I'm not sure anybody knew what this was.
Okay.
Even though you had eat, scan, and pay on there, I thought about the idea of eat, scan, pay, and then go. That's it. You're ready. You're done. You paid. You can go out the door. I think sitting here, I think people were curious.
Yes.
They see the barcode, or they would scan it, and they would say, "Okay, there we go.
There's the check.
There's the check."
Right.
Right.
So the customers picked it up pretty easy.
You know what? It was a learning curve.
Okay.
But they picked it pretty quick. Once they scanned it.
Scan it for your check. That's all, right? The rest of it they were able to pick up.
Yeah, it's self-explanatory.
And then what about your staff and rolling it out with your staff? So were they able to pick up on it? How to use the software pretty easily?
It's just a matter of them actually offering it to them to pay. And that's one thing I have to get, because it's new. So our staff is sometimes new is not always, easy to get people.
New is never fun, right? No one likes to
New
change.
is never fun.
Hey, you got something new to do today, right?
Right.
No one likes that. But you mentioned something that makes it easier and it reduces the time for the customers, right?
Right.
Do your staff see that it's easier to do this versus a credit
Oh
card
yeah, they love it.
transaction?
When they actually transaction's done, they love it.
Yeah. There's no paper, there's no pen, there's no back and forth, there's no manual entry to tip.
So now they do love it.
It's completely automated.
Yes.
Yeah. Exactly.
And I will have to say, you and Prince, Aaron and Prince both did a great job. I mean, you guys really brought it to us in a way that we weren't practicing and going. It was ready to go, and it was something that worked from the get-go. So there wasn't any of that. Some of these programs that come out, they halfway work or sometimes work, but that's not something that we're dealing with. I mean, you guys really enabled that to where that we felt comfortable with it.
Yeah.
It wasn't an uncomfortable feeling, and anytime we have a question or the staff has any question, you guys are also willing to help with that too, so that helps.
Awesome. We appreciate the feedback. Love you guys as customers, and obviously wish you the best through this challenging time
Yes.
that you go through.
Thank you.
But
Everybody in the industry.
That's it. So great. Again, French Quarter Cajun Seafood. They've got great food, and maybe we'll show you a little bit more about that.
You can finish it off. Homemade Snickers high stack cheesecake. And that will satisfy you right there.